And hello everyone, Carlos here again for another episode of What's Up in Archaeology. Today I'm going to read an article written by one of my favorite paleoanthropologists, which I recently discovered. Well, I discovered him this year. His name's John Hawkes. He studies human evolution, both to understand fossils and genetic evidence of our lineage, etc. And he's in one of his articles that he has in his site, and he in his blog site is basically wrapping up all the evidence we have that we have on our evolution, how we got here, or our eventually getting here. And so I'm going to discuss it and see where it gets us. I've read most of it. I haven't read it all, so it's going to be also a discovery for me. So before further ado, hello everyone. Hello, John the Bemused. Warped Reflections, my dear. Kianami, how are you, mate? Carlos David, always a pleasure to have you guys on. And just going to have a small sip of my beer. It's a robust porter, local craft beer. It's nice. I've had this before. I don't want to use up my exclusive, awesome other beers that I have, so I'm drinking the readily available ones until I get a really good article, and I do a really good collaboration with someone on an exceptional article, exceptional news story that on archaeology, and then I'll crack open something exceptional. I love using that word. So let's get sharing the screen, and let's see how we go. Basically, the article goes on: how much evidence have scientists found for human evolution? There are so many fossils that nobody knows the full number. Yes, no one has yet catalogued every fossil sample that has been dug up since the beginning. We know individual museums and universities that have X number of samples, but we don't know the total number. So here we go. I don't know how many fossil hominins, he doesn't, neither does anyone, are there in fossil hominid, how many hominid fossils are there in the world? There is no tabulation. The pace of discovery now is so fast to track each year for the last decade. Anthropologists and archaeologists have unearthed hundreds of fossil specimens from extinct hominin species and populations. I've already did What's Up in Archaeology on a couple of really recent discoveries. One was Denisovan, Homo sapiens denisovians, which we still haven't completely totally named, officially named. He will probably most likely we will settle on, like I said, on Denisovan, but at the start it could have been Homo sapiens altai. But we'll see how things are settled in as the more we discover. And the other one is Homo sebida, who is about half our size, human size. His brain capacity is half ours, about half, a bit more than the chimpanzees, obviously, 500 cc's. Yet they've discovered that he may have had the capacity to speak, and he did bury their dead. So I've mentioned this before. Now these are two really recent samples of them. He goes and says by 2012 in Cima de los Huesos, that's in Spain, in Burgos, near Burgos, Spain. That's not too far from here. It's only about 500 kilometers or even less. 500 kilometers from where I live, and they've the specimens there that they discovered, they range from archaic Homo sapiens, our ancestors, which possibly is no, it even goes further. It goes from Homo erectus, archaic Homo sapiens, Homo heidelbergensis, possibly Homo sapiens neanderthalensis, and Homo sapiens sapiens. Cima de los Huesos is a burial ground for or getting rid of your enemy type of scenario, but a lot of fossils have been found there. Like I said, from at least 26 individuals. Many more fossils have been recovered in every field season. In South Africa, the rising star hominin sample, that's Homo naledi, now total 2,000 specimens of at least 18 individuals. This deposit of hominin fossils was completely unknown until until 2013. From just two caves, they got nearly 9,000 fossil hominin specimens. Hello, Malachite. There are many other sites with hundreds of specimens each. Here's some of the samples from Cima de los Huesos. You can see the photographs. These the one that he's holding in his hand is Homo erectus, if I'm not mistaken. The one near the blue shirt is Homo sapiens or Homo neanderthalensis, and the one on the right I can't see very well. The one that he's holding is definitely, it's possibly Homo sapiens neanderthalensis or heidelbergensis. Yeah, that's the one. And the one with near the blue shirted guy is us, Homo sapiens sapiens. I can tell by the skulls. They're easy to once you get the eye in, you can tell that they're easy to identify. Now, there are many other sites with hundreds of species. He likes John Hawke, likes the Krapina in Croatia, which have preserved more than 30 Neanderthals who lived 120,000 years ago. Then in Africa, in Ethiopia, Hadar, which has a large area of sediment deposits in ancient rivers and lakes between 2.3 and 3.6 million years ago. And from there, they discovered hundreds of fossil specimens the last 45 years, including Lucy. So this area is where we found Lucy. So this is Australopithecus afarensis. Keep forgetting the earlier ones. I apologize. Then it's not coming. I haven't had enough to drink, so the memory's not there. But I've talked about them before. The lineage to Lucy, and afterwards you have Afarensis in this area, have Africanus in South Africa. They're almost contemporaneous. You have Paranthropus bosei, which used to be comparing the chimpanzee to Lucy, Paranthropus bosei would be gorilla, in terms of size, diet, etc. Because Lucy was an omnivore, while Paranthropus bosei was a purely vegetarian, vegetable, seeds and that. Yes, and we have the one from Greece. Which is at the moment the earliest hominin, but Greece and also Bulgaria. That species is Paranthropus or Chadensis, etc. They are closest to the ancestor that gave rise to us, our lineage, and Hello, guys. Can you hear me now? Uh, can you guys hear me now? Yes, you can. Okay. Uh, where's the sound coming from? Yeah, better. So I think you can hear me now. Excellent. Good. Let's continue. Um, I'm on my other accounts through on my laptop, so I'm still using this one as the to scroll down because I don't want to lose the page. So let's get back to where we got. As I was saying, sorry, before I probably was cut off. The sites that you guys didn't hear is from the more than 600 specimens have been found from Sterkfontein caves. Um, there's a slight echo. I think, yeah, I know. I've turned that off. I fixed the echo. Sorry about that. The ancient fossil deposits around Lake Turkana, Kenya, including the areas known as Kubifora, Rete, Nariokotome, Lomekwe, Kanapoi, have likewise generated hundreds of fossil hominins specimens. So you guys can hear me, I'm sure. Yes. Good. This is what a specimen is, just individual bone fragments. And this is from Karapina in Croatia. These are all Neanderthal bones. So you can see the massive hip joints there, some of the jaws, part of the craniums, etc. Notice that they did not have any chins, so that's why we know they're Neanderthals. Now, the National History of National Museum of Natural History reports that the hominin fossil records includes the remains of more than 6,000 individuals. Sounds all right, guys? I think it is. I can't turn on my the sound so I can hear. I think you guys can hear me well. So yeah, let's get on with it. Yeah, anyway, of course, the total number of fossils depend on how we count. Partial skeletons make a challenge especially clear. For example, the Olduvai Gorge fossil hominins have been listed by individual up to Olduvai hominin 82. So they found up to 82 of them and more. And they have been listed individual the fossils and beyond. Some of these individuals are known from only one lone tooth. Others are partial skeletons made up of fragments like Olduvai hominin 862. Um, uh, they probably haven't found the I've talked before why it's hard to fossilize for the organic material to fossilize. I explained it in a program before that it's an exceptional, a very exceptional circumstances that you get anything was from any time back, any period back in time after the animal dies. The animal or hominin, human, whatever dies, getting for it to be preserved in any meaningful way. It's an extremely uh, exceptional event. Really, really exceptional. Um, I won't say exceptional again, guys. Sorry about that. It's not easy. It requires a hell of a lot of factors to get to preserve anything that we get here. So having only one tooth means that the teeth is one of the hardest materials that we have in our body. It is the easiest one to preserve. due to the enamel, that preserves the teeth, makes them. That's why it's really hard. They are really hard objects. They're harder than bones, of course. The least easiest to preserve are the soft tissues, which is obviously unless they fall into bogs, for example, acidic bogs, alkali bogs, I should say, that preserve the materials really well. Some sites like the fossil localities in the Omo, Shungura, in the regions of southern Ethiopia, where fragments of a large number of hominid individuals who lived up to many thousands of years with no partial skeletons. Nearly every tiny fossil or a handful of teeth is another ancient individual. We may not know how much about each other, but we can see something about how they vary. For example, we know that the small variations between each individual from the individual fossil samples, we can gather some information. Other sites are known for their partial skeletons. Malapa has two, with more individual representative of bones still in breccia. Breccia is the conglomerate of stone of earth rock that's that the fossil is embedded in. So they have many of them that still haven't been extracted from the breccia. The great Neanderthal sites of France, Belgium, Spain, Italy, and Germany: La Feresi, La Chapelle aux Saints, Spy, La Mousture, Cima de las Palomas, Altamura, Feldhofen Cave, Monte Circeo. The sites of Near East, Shul, Tabun, Kebara, Amud, Kafez, Dederie, Shanida. Most of these are Israel, or modern day Turkey, northern Iraq, the areas like that. Shanida is in Israel. The Shanida Cave, I would love to visit that because it has Mount Carmel there, and it's exceptional, beautiful. Sorry about the exceptional. It's a superb place. The list go on and on. Each site has partial skeletons of ancient individuals from populations that no longer exist. Skeletons are essential from understanding how different parts of the body were subject to different adaptive and non-adaptive histories. So from all these different samples, from all these different hominins, we can compare and how they have changed over time and over the species. When we look at periods older than a million years ago, do fossil sites with skeletons become much more exceptional? He said it, I didn't. But there remain a few. Malapa, Naria Kotome, Aramis Damnisi, that's in Georgia. One of the oldest. Damnisi has one of the oldest Homo erectus fossil finds outside of Africa. It is the oldest, in fact, outside of Africa. It is exceptionally close to the period which we think Homo erectus evolved into. Sterkfontein, Hada, Waramso, Mile, Olduvai Gorge, Kubifora. Their importance is evidence, no matter how we count the pieces, of course. We can give even those individual samples that may be of 4 or 5 fossil samples of one individual is enough to help us piece together a history, and not just the history of that individual itself, but of the species. So no soul to excel, no. Bog mummies are all absolutely Homo sapiens sapiens. So now this is interesting. Anthropologists have long had a skull fixation. H. Bomber Guy is right, but not about the anti-SJWs. He's right about anthropologists and archaeologists. We do have a skull fixation because skulls are possibly after Homo erectus evolved, Skulls are basically the most characteristic of the body parts of the hominins after that. Yes, the bones of each of the following species could be longer, shorter, wider, more massive, less massive, etc. But the basic anatomy from Homo erectus onwards has in the body has been basically set. Small changes in pelvis, male, female, etc., possibly due to the shape of the skull, of course, but the rest of the body is basically has been set. Now, the skulls haven't. The skulls of each of the individuals have been very malleable, and they have changed. Now, some sites like Sangiran and Gandong in Indonesia. This site is from Java man, Homo erectus, and Jakutian, Peking man. Now we have the fossils we don't have the originals of Jakutian though. They were lost after the Japanese invasion. So we have casts though, and photographs, and the actual some of the records, etc. Java man, the Sangiran and Gandong from Indonesia. We have them. Java man's the colloquial name that has been given that time, but they are basically Homo erectus. And they are mainly a series of skulls, numbering close to a dozen of each of these. Although other bones of the skeletons have been found in these places, one partial skeleton is associated with remains of one of the earlier modern human skulls in Africa, and the other is the site at Jebel Irhoud, Morocco. This one was discovered 2 years ago, and this sample, this Jebel Irhoud, pushed back Homo sapiens sapien lineage, us modern humans, by 100,000 years. So Lake Tole, Tanzania, Herto in Ethiopia, these skulls have been the main focus. Yeah, so here we have a wall of skulls. We love skulls. Archaeologists and anthropologists love skulls. And so do these visitors. Each skull tells a story. How the brain got bigger, and etc. You can see some of them here. We have a Homo sapiens right in this corner here, and Neanderthal. Another Homo sapiens. We have an archaic Homo sapiens here, because of the instead of the flattened forehead, even though he's got a slightly big brow ridges, he has an arching forehead, flat forehead. Just a few of the samples. Here's another one in the middle, Neanderthals, and etc. So these are just basically the Homo sapiens. Yes, Homo sapiens is Neanderthals as well. Homo sapiens neanderthalensis. So no, it's not a cult. Just we study them because they're interesting in our academy. So let's continue. Once we realize how much evidence for evolution comes from modern humans, there is almost no end to it. Research conditions of modern human skeletal remains number hundreds of thousands worldwide. Yes, because there's a lot of them, and a lot of them have been found, and they're more recent, so they've been preserved a bit more. Every road cut and building foundation has a chance of running into ancient human remains. Where do many of these archaeologist remains are studied, when they do, by scientists and preserved in collections. You can see how they were stored and how they are stored. This is in Vienna, the Naturalhistorische Museum in Vienna. I pronounce names quite well, don't I? Not bragging or anything, but The proboscis, yes, but that's when you have skin. The proboscis measurements. So the Great Natural History Museums of the world, many founded in the late 19th century, and they collected skulls more back then than the whole skeleton, because they couldn't. They thought that, oh, we have a skull here, but look at all these bones. Oh, they're just modern bones. Don't worry, they were probably tossed here or something. So the earliest archaeologists, anthropologists, did not like the rest of the body. Most of them were kept. Others were. Other the samples, which God, it makes me cringe and sick, is that many of them were the skeletal and fossil samples below the neck were basically destroyed or used as landfill or backfill in the sites that they had. So it's God damn it. Tigers, I lived in Australia for about 22 years. I grew up there, so yes, I can. This is my academic Australian accent, but I can do my growing up. I can do my more deeper walk type accent. But yeah, I am Portuguese. I was born in Portugal, then I just my parents immigrated to Australia, and they took me along. They didn't leave me here. No, I am Portuguese. I lived in Australia, and I came back in 1993. So that's my life story. Anyway, back to the excavations and so on. In those days, expeditions and excavations collected tens of thousands of contemporary skulls from around the world. Charles Darwin only touched one Neanderthal fossil. Bit of bigotry going on in this thing, man. It was just after Darwin's theory of evolution came out, and so anthropologists were just rushing around the world, digging up native grave sites and collecting skulls and measuring them and saying, "Oh, look, let's divide them. These people, what we have here into." They basically didn't find much, even though they tried. So it was very. That's where racism came from. This period, but that's for another thing. So, but he and another anthropologist this time still knew an enormous amount other than variations of humans around the world. They did, because enabling Darwin to form some hypothesis about human evolution and that we still accept today. Of course, he would have not seen the extremes of colours, because he did go around the world, him and others, also Huxley, who also independently developed the theory of evolution. What they found in the living peoples, not so much of the skulls, because the skulls surprisingly didn't the variation within the skulls fall under a natural variations you would find in England, for example, the UK, for example. If they dug up the graveyards from North Scotland to southern England, you would see a variation which would be probably slightly higher than what they found in the whole of the world. So this is basically explaining and debunking race. And that's what he studied, and that's what he found, basically. Yes, Wallace. So that's the one I was trying to think. Wallace, not Huxley. Huxley is another. Huxley, bloody hell! I'm thinking about Thomas Huxley, the writer. I must have been The Brave New World. Sorry about that, guys. It's Wallace, exactly. Wallacea. That's the division, the dividing line between Southeast Asia and Australia. The mammals that are different. One of them has primates, the other one doesn't. God damn it. Sorry, guys, about my mistake. But anyway. Many of those enormous collections of bones still exist today, and today scientists like him study them to document the recent evolution of human populations. He started John Hawkes has studied thousands of these humans, these bones, these skulls, etc. The changes that we see in skeleton populations over the last 10,000 years were some of the oldest scientific findings in anthropology. Those roles have been rejuvenated by the study of ancient DNA recovered from the bones, which have confirmed some very rapid evolutionary changes in relatively short time. Ancient DNA has transformed the quantity of evidence from some fossil sites. So yes, thank you, Jonathan. That's why I get oh God, I was confused. I was thinking about I read the other day or Brave New World. I reread it because I read it many times. Sometimes I go back to reading my books, and I was thinking about Huxley instead of Wallace. But yeah, I got to have another drink. Sorry, I'm not pissed enough. I have no excuses. I apologize. I won't make any excuses anymore for my idiocy. Now, ancient DNA has transformed the quantity of evidence from some fossil sites. One site with an extremely few and fragmentary skeletal remains, Denisova Cave in Russia, preserved ancient DNA with a higher fidelity than any other site of such ancient timelines, stretching from more than 30,000 back to 100,000 years ago. Because it's very cold and constant temperature, the cave itself, I've talked about Denisova before, the cave of Denisova. Okay, Tigers. The cave itself has a constant 2-degree temperature all year round, 2 degrees positive, and can go down to in the front of the cave, more or less, it can go down to -30. So it's because the deeper you go inside a cave, it becomes more constant. There's a very less variations in change. So Matthias Meyer and his colleague recovered DNA data from a tiny fragment of a finger bone, which you can see there, the picture, known as Denisova 3, and amounting to had the whole genome sequence some 60 times over. They extracted the genome sequence of Denisova from that little bone, and it had such quality DNA that they had 60 times over the whole sequence. That's how much data they could extract from well-preserved skeletal remains. Counting such evidence is like counting leaves in a million trees, of course. It's a nice analogy. Now, transformative discoveries from DNA show that the evidence of our evolution is not only looking for fossils. It requires us to look within and beyond fossils. Scientists now are looking not only at DNA evidence, but also ancient proteins and genetics and other biochemical traces. To test the hypothesis of such evidence, we must know just as much or more about the biology of the living humans and the living primate relatives. Today, some questions about ancient human relatives are not limited to the fossils. Of course not. We are using more and more the data that we can extract. Before these modern genetic sequencing techniques, which are improving every day. I read an article. DARPA is investing, I think it was $65 million to improve the sequencing of DNA, the actual machine that sequences DNA, to make it much faster to actually make the genetic map of an individual. So that's one of the tools. Another one's, of course, proteins, because the proteins and DNA working in conjunction. For now, we've already mapped the human DNA, and we're starting to map the pyroprotein DNA, and not just protein, but all other enzymatic and all the other functions that the body, living body, works does, so on, living beings, so on. So to test the hypothesis of such evidence, we must know like more than the living. We study living primates. From living primates, we can get character. We can get personality traits. We can get psychological traits of what our first ancestors was, and compare them to what we do now. I'm not talking about social science. I'm talking about the actual people like environmental psychologists, like what's his name? God damn it. Gadsad and not Jordan Peterson, the other one. One of the Four Horsemen. I can't remember his name. God damn it. It'll come to me, or someone in the chat will post his name. The last living Four Horsemen. Not Dan, the other one. Harris. That's one. Harris. Harris. My brain froze, guys. Sorry about that. No, not Dawkins. He's a biologist. Waking up with Sam Harris, isn't it? Oh, never mind. It'll come to me. No, not Sam Harris. No. Never mind. It'll come to me. It'll come to me. But let's get back. That can get back to before I lose my train of thought. From studying the comparative analysis of our closest living relatives, the bonobos and the chimpanzees. No, not Jane Goodall. She's we use her data, by the way. We use her data from the work that she does with the chimpanzees. Sam Harris, that's the one. Yes, thank you, Sam Harris. Uh, he's not a working psychologist. He's an evolutionary psychologist. He, apart from doing all the podcasting that he used to, he wrote books about it. I have one of his books. So yeah, they use that to get to see how we interact with our societies, because their societies and our societies, at least before agriculture. Yeah, him too. But I prefer Sam Harris than Brett Weinstein. Yeah, I would trust more Sam Harris than Brett. That's my personal opinion. Sam Harris has less baggage to carry along in his studies, but that's my personal viewpoint and mine alone. So yes, they are in concluding. Here's Homo naledi bones. You can see the samples there. But we are now using all these tools increasingly. Like I said before in many of my programs, we collaborate with physicists, chemists, with biologists, with anthropologists. I'm talking about archaeologists as me, physical anthropologists, with even computer programmers, with with psychologists, with so on, to get picture, to make the clearest picture of what we are now. Taking into account that the food production completely changed the way we interacted with each other. But that is for another program. For this one, I'm talking about pre-agriculture. So yes, we can use the models that have been developed and are being developed from chimpanzees and bonobos to try and infer what our interaction were, and not just those, because we still have records of, for example, the Australian Aborigines studies. Gould, think of his first name, the late Professor Gould, who made a lot of, he studied the societies, pre-agricultural societies that lived up until the 60s in many places, in the Amazonian forest and in Papua New Guinea, in some isolated places, in Indonesia, in Southeast Asia, etc. Elliot Gould. Thank you, John W. News. That's the one. I couldn't think of his first name. I'm crap at names. I can think of other things, but names, you guys can see that I'm crap at names. But these pre-agricultural societies, hunter-gathering societies, in the San people of Southern Africa, we have enough data for how they interacted and how they interacted with their environment, etc. We can use them to try and interpret the evolution, the archaeological record that we dig up. So yes, and that's basically what John Hawkes is basically saying. So in conclusion, you see, there is no simple answer as to how much evidence human evolution we have found. There's an awful lot, and in some ways more than we can possibly count. Yes, we have the bones. We have now the DNA evidence, data. We have the data done by physical anthropologists in the field. I just mentioned a few: Elliot Gould et al., Jane Goodall, with working chimpanzees, etc. And the assassinated one that worked with the gorillas. What was her name? She also have her data, her records. So we've built up a picture a picture of database that we can access to try and interpret how we evolved. The last scientist trying to generate a compendium list of basic information about fossil remains from the important site is stretched to 4 volumes, covering more than 1,800 pages, and that was more than 10 years ago. Before all these new evidence, these new hominins that were found, the lady, Denisovan, etc. Just Florensis, Homo florensiens. So just them, yeah. So some anthropologists say that we don't need more evidence. We need better ways to use the evidence we have found. Fair enough. But I say if that were true, then the fossil discoveries in the last decade should have given us more than the same things that we are. This is my position too. My position is what John Hawkes said here. If we have already collected all the evidence we need, the new ones should have already said, oh, look, these are about the same. But no, a Homo and a lady just cracked these thoughts completely, just basically debunked this line of thinking that we have enough evidence already found. No, we don't. We are finding more evidence every single day, and we need to continue to more excavations, more field work, more studies, etc. Even though the studies are different points of view from what we have already. Getting more ways to extract DNA, older and older fossils, etc. Instead of the scientific exploration keeps generating full unexpected discoveries, we have found new ancient populations. Yes, both new fossil discoveries and their genomes. We have found tendrils in our genetic ancestry in unexpected places. We have found that our DNA of the Andaman Islands, a hominin that we don't know about. We haven't found any evidence except that the DNA from those people. There's an article that was published this week that's in our saliva. There's a ghost of another possible, could be the one of the animal, of a possible and other hominid that we don't know about. We are just beginning to. It's like a journey. We have just set off out of our backyard while we still have even we haven't even crossed the block or the neighborhood, let alone across the city of our city. That's an analogy that I would give of what we are up at now. So the past is not a comfortable world. Obviously, that I grew up in the Time Life books from the 70s. It is a strange and new and changing, and we must keep exploring for more. I am fully on this. Yes, we need to. I just said it. We need to explore more and keep exploring and keep digging, both metaphysically, metaphorically, and actually literally keep digging for more, because uh, we are at the midst of an undiscovered country. Oh, I like the way we finished then. And on that brighter note, I hope this was a good way to finish. I'll end this stream here. Just a small announcement. Tomorrow, I won't be doing the Neanderthal Tuesdays. Not that I don't have any material for it, I have so much material, but I'm moving it up to Wednesday. It'll be half an hour, 10 o'clock to 10:30. It will be a short and sweet. Because tomorrow I'm going out. There's a small festival not far from here, and has music, fireworks, and shit. And I want to go enjoy myself, even though I work tomorrow. But that's another thing. So I'll stop sharing this. And again, I apologize. I always keep getting these technical difficulties. And I hope everyone enjoyed this. And thank you for coming on. And see you Wednesday. Anyone who comes along, see you Wednesday. And I hope you can see how wonderful discovery is. Not just archaeological discovery, all discoveries. Opening up the mind, opening up the journey. The journey is in itself the best thing about getting there. Getting there, once we get there, we've stopped or so on. That's nothing. It's the actual journey that that counts. And so on. Okay, guys, thank you again. Thank you for coming along, and bye bye.